Welcome to Utopia Live. Utopia is a global SAP partner providing data-driven business solutions to asset-intensive as well as retail and fashion industries. Focused on data quality, migrations, and governance solutions that enable organizations to harness high-quality data to take cost out of their business, maximize operational performance, automate and streamline, and better leverage technology investments. Thanks for joining today. This interactive event is designed to allow you to fuel your initiatives. You're encouraged to be engaged and ask questions from today's subject matter experts. And now, it's time for Utopia Live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, no matter where you are around the globe. Welcome to Utopia Live. I'm your host, Tom Martin, and this morning I'm joined by Mike Jordan. Mike is the EAM practice lead and vice president at Utopia. Mike, good morning. How are you?
Hi, Tom. Was that your voice on that intro video?
Well, it may have been. It may have been.
If you can't make it in technology marketing, man, you've got a future in WWE announcements. That was impressive.
Thanks, Mike. Mike, let me tell you, Mike, I'm up here in Greater Chicago land, and I'll tell you what, it's now April 16th. We actually got a little bit of snow overnight. I'm guessing down in our remote Huntsville, Alabama broadcast studio, we weren't picking up any snow overnight.
It is springtime in the South. You're just missing it all together.
Bummer. Mike, I know regularly you are traveling around the globe. You're meeting with maintainers and operators, C-suite executives. You're talking with them about ways to maximize their asset availability, take costs out of the business. You live your life on an airplane, Mike. What's it feel like to be at home for once?
Yeah, I think I have 20% more brain cells because I'm not jet lagged. It's a great life.
I bet you're enjoying getting a little bit of downtime at home with your wife. I'm sure Sharon is as happy to have you home. Maybe.
Well, yeah. On the better days, sometimes I'm underfoot, but it's not slower. I think that everyone is still having the same issues. We're still having the same business challenges. We're just all adjusting to how to do it like this, as a little postage stamp on a computer screen rather than face to face. So the issues are there, the opportunity for improvements there. We're just learning how to go about it a different way. Interesting
times we live in, for sure, Mike. So before we get started, we want to jump right into it. So we have a lot of time for question and answers. But before we do, just a couple of quick housekeeping notes. If you'd like to change the view on your screen, you can either maximize the content, you can maximize the webcam view. If that's what you want to do, you can just toggle that up at the top of your screen. The other important note, of course, is that this is designed to be an entirely interactive session. Mike has been in asset management for decades, a true expert in the craft, in the field. So please do tap into his leadership by typing those questions in. Type them in now, type them in throughout Mike's presentation, type them in when Mike wraps up his presentation. But no matter what, type them in. This is all about you fueling your initiatives and in answering your greatest questions that you have. The other reminder is that following today's broadcast today, as well as tomorrow and throughout next week, Mike will be holding follow-up meetings, one-on-one meetings. And the best way to schedule those meetings is there should be a link right now in your chat box. Just simply go ahead and click that. It's an interactive scheduling tool. You can go ahead and schedule a time that works best for you and your teams, but we encourage you to click that and schedule those meetings before they fill up. Go ahead and do that right now or at the end of the presentation. So today we're talking about all things taking costs out of the business and ensuring critical part availability through MRO, supply chain optimization. Mike, we're in a COVID-19 world right now. more than ever before, folks need to find mechanisms, find ways to take costs out of the business and ensure their operational uptime. So I know folks are really excited about today's presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. Mike, we'll go ahead and hand it over to you.
Thanks, Tom. The focus really is the issues we've always had, but now we're addressing them in a different environment. The cost optimization is always been an issue, but now critical parts availability is become more of a challenge in our current operating environment. What we'll talk about today very quickly is who is Utopia, but more importantly, we'll talk about the supply chain in the current business environment, the reality today of where we are, and then a Utopia strategy as we partner with SAP on how to address the pressing needs at hand. Very quickly, I'll tell you about Utopia. We've been in business 18 years. We are data guys. We've always focused on large scale data problems, data transformation, data migration, data enrichment. We partner very closely with SAP. So we're working with SAP customers as they're migrating data from their older systems, 4.6C into ECC, now ECC into S4. I run the EAM practice, so when I talk, it sounds like life is assets, which is really the important stuff. Utopia does it all. We address data across the board to get the data right and keep it right in SAP customers. I focus on asset intensive industries where the asset master data really matters. We partnered with SAP after beginning just as services people. We partnered with SAP to build out SAP's products for master data governance, for enterprise asset management, asset information workbench. So this is called a solution extension. We are one of 35 customer partners that focus particularly on collaborative development of software with SAP that is now SAP's product. So we're a software and services company focusing particularly on asset master data. We work globally. As you see from the list there, we focus primarily on asset intensive industries, oil and gas, chemicals, utilities, manufacturing, consumer goods, areas where the assets matter to keep the operations underway. We built a methodology that addresses the particularly challenges of asset master data. Traditionally, we would just do the services side. We'd clean up a customer's data, do the transformation, enrichment, get their master data exactly right. Then a couple of years later, they'd call us to do it again because the assets had changed and the data didn't. So we with SAP built a methodology called Build, Fix, Sustain that allows us to get the data right and deploy the SAP governance technology to keep the data right. So let's do that hard job one more time and then put the governance in place so that from that point forward, we'll keep it right. I know these are some busy slides. We'll share all the slides with you after so you're not worried about reading all the details. In our current business environment, the challenges for master data are particularly acute. Here's an example of a plant manager. The plant manager's concern today is maintaining operational effectiveness today, to keep the lights on, to keep production underway when it's never been more important. In this environment, the availability of critical spares is crucial to keep the plants running. The repairs must be in place to get the repairs to work. The spares must be in place. But supply chain is more fragile. The sources of spare parts perhaps aren't what they used to be. We have to ensure that in a fragile supply chain, we can still keep operations underway. As you look at the point of view from a supply chain manager, you have to ask, what spare parts are we most likely to need to ensure uninterrupted operation? And do we have those spare parts on hand? Chief procurement officer is now worried, if we don't have them here, do we have that spare part or a functional equivalent in a nearby facility? If my local supplier's down, where can I find the spares? Maybe I've got one down the way in a sister plant. And if my local supplier is not available, what in-region suppliers are there for the needed spare part, or a supplier for a functional equivalent spare part? And the CFO is now worried about what can we possibly do to cut costs, to reduce spending, to make ourselves lean and able to just keep going in the times that we're in. The reality is less than perfect. If you look at the studies by KPMG, Gartner, Harvard Business Group, many organizations' data isn't in the best shape. SAP would say data that you don't trust isn't data. And quite often, as you look at these surveys, organizations find that their underlying master data really isn't in shape to achieve the transformational initiatives that we have underway. In fact, as we look at customers in asset-intensive industries, quite often, or typically 8% of the equipment records don't have make and model information. So the equipment is there, it's operational, but I couldn't quite tell you what manufacturer it is or what model number it is. 4% of the equipment exists without a bill of material. We'll talk about why that matters. And 10% of the spare parts aren't really available as a material record. Now, on a good day, this is working. I mean, you guys are who you are. You're operational. Some things must be working fine. Quite often it's working because you have guys doing maintenance and supply chain that have hair the color of mine. The data might not be right, but it just works, and I know how it works, and I know where the stuff is to make it work. As we look at the situation today, the data quite often is fragile. Lack of consistently applied taxonomy and naming conventions can result in duplicate records, duplicate materials. Some of our customers will find that when we get into it, they've got the same part on the shelf in multiple locations called different things. So as supply chain gets lean, maybe you have the part on your shelf, it's just somewhere else called something else. Bills of material matter because as you're working to focus on keeping safety critical equipment, process critical equipment operational, you have to know what spare parts do I really need. That's in the bill of material, so that as things get lean, you can worry about the most important things and ensure that you got the parts you need to keep things operational. The methodology we built with SAP begins to do the data transformation and get your data right. As we do that, the starting place has to be where you have data you trust. That's as-built information. And that means the equipment that's on the floor today. Makes no sense to go worry about data about a piece of equipment that you retired last year. So we start with, where do you have trusted as-built information? And some customers, they say, I've got data in my maintenance system, but I'm not sure that's right. But I trust my engineering drawings. If nothing else is right, my P&ID is right. We keep those up to date. So if that's the case, we'll take your piping and instrumentation diagrams, do the takeoffs from that. So we'll start with the data in your maintenance system, the data on your engineering drawings. We can start with data in other systems of record, but let's start with the accurate as-built data. Some customers don't trust the data in their maintenance system, the data in the engineering drawings. In that case, we can do plant walk downs. In our current climate, you should do the plant walk downs. There's no need for travel. We can put technology in the hands of your operators. You can put the local people to work, the local technicians that you want to keep employed, an electrician, a maintenance guy that knows your plant. We'll put the technology in his hands so that you can do photographic field data collection. We will facilitate it. We'll show you how to organize it. We'll put the technology in their hand. Go take photos of the brass tacks, take photos of your equipment, and we got it from there. What we're looking for is accurate make and model information. If we know manufacturer and model number, we're off and running. That allows us to kick in our 4Cs process. This is Utopia's methodology: cleanse, create, consolidate, classify. We can start with the data and maintenance systems, engineering drawings, photos of brass tags. Give us make and model information and we're off and running. I mentioned we began business as a services company. We began with mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, putting eyes on drawings and doing this work. We have hundreds of these guys in our data center in Bangalore. It was manual. Now we've harvested that expertise and put it in machine learning algorithms. So we have an end-to-end methodology that harnesses the expertise of the smart guys and allows us to work on data sets with millions of materials, millions of equipment, and turn that professionally quickly. So we can start with the data in your maintenance system. Sometimes our customers think, I just don't have make and model information. In fact, maybe you do, it's just not where you expected. So we'll mine the data in the long text. We'll mine the data to look for manufacturer model information. We'll take the data from a photo of a brass tag. Then we carry forward from that make and model. We'll recognize the class of equipment that is. That's a centrifugal pump. Therefore, based upon the standards ISO 14224, here are the characteristics I need to describe that pump properly. We'll look first to the data you have in hand and organize it, arrange it. Then we can look to the Utopia library where we've enriched millions of equipment for people like you. Then we'll go to the manufacturer's website, scrape the website, pull that additional information such that we can come back with perfect, accurate, as-built information, an equipment record that has all the characteristics as specified by ISO 14224. We'll auto-generate the short text and long text so that there's only one way to describe a particular piece of equipment or material, make it pristine, perfect, so there's no duplicates, easily to recognize, easy to describe, and then we'll deploy it to your systems in an asset intelligence network library. Important, we can do all of this remotely. We don't have to put people on your site. We can work very quickly to get your data right and then deploy the underlying SAP technology to keep it right. Here's an example of the process for maintenance spares. On the left, you see what we typically find. It's a description. On a sunny day when everything's right, the guy that always looks at it knows just what that is. If another guy is looking from another part of the plant, maybe he doesn't recognize it. It's not consistent. So first we'll cleanse the data that recognizes what's there, puts it in standard nomenclature, organizes it in a standard fashion. Then we can cleanse, standardize, and consolidate the next level of detail. Suddenly it's looking predictable. It's looking organized. There's only one way to describe a certain thing. Then we'll enrich it. That's where we go to our databases. We go outside. We can go to the manufacturer's databases, scrub that data, build out an enriched record. Now there's only one way to describe that ball bearing. And regardless of make and model, I can recognize what that is. So I can see unambiguously whether I have it on a shelf. Then I can look for alternate sources. If that's not, if that manufacturer isn't available, what other sources of that equipment or that material are there? And it's not confusing. It's easy to say, do I have it? Can I find alternate sources, and how do I do that quickly? Here's a real world test case. We have a customer that was in the midst of a digital transformation, very large multinational customer, manufacturer that is on the way to doing the transformation from legacy systems into a new SAP S/4HANA environment. We had been doing data transformation work with them back in the early 2014-15 time frame, looking at their North American plants. They said, now we're ready. Would you help again? was part of a broader initiative doing that transformation. Well, the wheels fell off of that because nobody can travel. What they did find is, well, the data part of that, the data track, we can carry forward with because we don't need to be on site. So they said, let's carry on with the data part. Let's get our data right. Then they had a particular emergency. They said, our supply chain is getting fragile. We have plants everywhere, but the plants work autonomously. They work locally. They have local suppliers. And we're worried now that those local suppliers may not survive, may go out of business. Suddenly what worked great might not be working. So if that local supplier isn't there, what do we do? And we were working through that. Let's normalize, standardize, let's do the things we do. And they said, now I have an emergency. I have this spare part. I have a need for this spare part, but I don't have it. My local supplier is in trouble. He's not going to be able to get me that part for 5 days. This piece of equipment is going to shut down my plant for the 5 days. What can I do? Well, we took the description. They said, here's a photo, here's manufacturer model information. We quickly were able to enrich it and say, well, here's the parts you really need. Here's a robust description based upon UNSPSC. From there, we were able to go to the equipment records. Remember, they gave us this data, their data from their North American plants. When we were able to enrich that equipment and address it properly, we were able to say, based upon that description, you have not that part, but you have 3 functional equivalent parts on the shelf in other plants in North America. So there's 3 strong possibilities of functional equivalent parts that you can have available overnight. We then did a broader search. We looked at SAP's Asset Intelligence Network to broader supplier list and said, here are other functionally equivalent parts. So you can look for the spare parts you need, manufacturer model, or you can look for these functionally equivalent parts, as we found from SAP's Asset Intelligence Network. Then from AIN plus outside sources, we were able to say, here's alternate sources for those functionally equivalent parts. So from an environment where they only had one source, the place we always look is not available, we've got problems because each plant calls our parts something different. Although we have several plants that make the same product, everything stands alone, stands uniquely. We went from an environment where a plant is a plant and has to worry within its 4 walls to everyone has common naming conventions. Do you have one? How about you? Do you? Could you overnight it? And then beyond that, to say, if not that part, what are the functional equivalents? This Utopia did this particular little proof case in 24 hours. It wasn't intended as a test. It was first a cry for help, but we were able to deliver because of the quality of the information. So what that means in practice is to build upon the standards. I mentioned build, fix, sustain as our methodology. Build is the phase where we collaborate with you to establish standards. ISO 14224 began as a standard for oil and gas industry. It's now broadened such that it is the standard to describe assets in any asset intensive industry. When you align on ISO 14224 for equipment, UNSPSC for materials, align the data as you see, this allows you to organize your data to make best use of your automation infrastructure, of the new technologies you want to deploy with SAP S4. By aligning the hierarchy structure of your plant with the specific classes of equipment, you can build specific bills of material that are unambiguous and tie those to material masters. When you do that in that order, you can walk into any MRO supply chain store, pick up anything from your shelf and say, where is this used and when will I need it next? The value creation opportunity. Remember, we talked about the plant operators, plant manager is worried about keeping the lights on. The CFO is worried about how do we save cost. It's there. By doing this work like this, it's easy to recognize obsolete inventory. We had a customer, an asset intensive customer, stand at an SAP forum and say, because of deploying this SAP solution, we anticipate saving $100 million in MRO supply chain cost. Reduce inventory stockpiling by saying, I'm always going to call this. Now I don't have it in 5 different shelves and 5 different names. I can say, here's how much I need and here's where it is. And then improving work order completion by getting the right parts, the right instructions into the hands of the maintenance worker. The maintenance worker is more productive. So accurate, complete asset master data has direct impact on value creation. There's a methodology that SAP promotes. They call it the no regret steps methodology. That slide didn't quite build right. Let's try it again. What the no regret steps proposes is to say, let's take the data that you have in your legacy systems, in your engineering drawings. Let's take that out, do the cleansing, do the transformation of that data, just as I described, and then we'll deploy a single box, a single SAP platform, is S4 platform that contains the key governance elements. Master data governance for materials, master data governance for EAM, asset information workbench, importantly, asset intelligence network and OpenText. We'll deploy that single box. We'll load the data onto that single box to get your data right today. And then, because of the capabilities of the SAP tools, we can govern that data back to your legacy systems. So you don't have to carry through the whole S4 transform. Let's get your data right today and get the benefits of perfect data, supply chain redundancy, value improvement. And then when you're ready to deploy S4, maybe next year or the year after, you've taken all the risk out of the transformation because we've transformed the hardest data problem already. The data is ready to move. So we can move the data into the new platform and then govern it in the new platform. So you get the benefits of perfect data today. We take the risk out of your S4 transformation. And then when you're ready, there's no lost work. So the work we described that is fully remote, cleanse your data, get the supply chain data ready today such that you can run in a fault tolerant fashion. This is no lost work. This is work we would have done anyway on the way to your S4 transformation. Let's just get it done now, get the benefits of it, and then it's ready for use later. So all the capabilities, all the possibilities of the plan of the future really has perfect data as an underpinning. It's all possible when you have the confidence that the pump that you think is there is actually the pump that's there. Then we build from that accurate as-built data to achieve all the types of benefits that are possible with the next generation of automation. You're probably familiar with SAP's value engineering organization. They've benchmarked organizations just like you, and time after time, they've proven the benefits of perfect data are real. This is what's possible with the technology. We've just got to get the data right, then deploy the technology to keep it right, and all things are possible. Tom, I think we got a bit of time left for questions.
Mike, we sure do. That was an exciting presentation, and the first thing that I've got to comment on, and you kind of just sped through it in the presentation, was go back to that large multinational corporation that you were speaking of. How much were they projecting and saving in just the first year alone?
100 million in MRO supply chain cost.
Well, it's a very large number, and of course it's a very large customer, a very large multinational corporation, but that is a very sizable number. Folks, again, just a reminder, make sure you type your questions in now. I see several rolling in. Mike is going to be live here for the next 30 minutes, so now's the time. Fuel those initiatives, seize the opportunities, overcome the challenges, type the questions in. We're going to try to get through as many as we possibly can. The first one up, Mike, I think we've got some reliability folks on the line with us today. Folks are talking about, how do the solutions that you spoke on play into a reliability context and RCM perspective as well?
Well, that's a great question. Basically, all things are possible whenever you have the accurate, complete master data. The challenge for all of the reliability analytics tools is to understand the actual equipment in place. By completely accurately describing an equipment with complete characteristics in ISO 14224, you're able to plug into a much broader body of analysis. SAP's tool set, Intelligent Asset Management, has the ability to collaborate between OEMs, between other manufacturers using the same equipment. So once you have your equipment properly described, so you know what's there, you can plug into tools like AIN to look at manufacturers' recommended operating specifications, to do the predictive analytics, to do the reliability-centered maintenance that is possible. Again, you're going to find that a lot of the questions have the same answer. Once we're confident of what we have, once we're confident of how it's properly described, then we can tap into the broader bit of knowledge from the OEMs, from peer manufacturing organizations, and understand best practices.
That's great, Mike. Another question just came in. Most companies have BOMs associated with their equipment, for all equipment or mostly their critical equipment. What do you see out there, Mike?
Well, no, most companies don't. This is an area where there's a lot of room for improvement. It's not necessary for everything, but for safety critical equipment, for process critical equipment, manufacturers provide recommended spare parts lists. From that, it's easy enough to build an accurate bill of material. What that allows you to do is before you're doing an overhaul, before you're doing any type of maintenance on the equipment, you can look to the bill of material, go check availability of parts before you ever do the job. The bill of material allows you to have that certainty to say, for process critical equipment, do I have the safety stock in place that ensures that operation? If you don't have a bill of material, as I mentioned, we can help. You can look to the manufacturer's recommended spare parts list. There's another way to go about it. We can take all of your data, your maintenance data, look at maintenance history to say, over the last 10 years, what have I used? When I repair that equipment, I always use this list of parts. Well, effectively, that's a bill of material. We can create the bill of material from those usage data pragmatically, so that for particularly process critical, safety critical equipment, you have the bill of material you need that allows you to ensure effective operation. There's one other place where that comes to bear is maintenance productivity. Sorry, Tom, I'll do better at short answers, but not this one.
No, but it's helpful, Mike. Keep going.
EPRI did a study looking at productivity of maintenance workers in North America. What they found is that on average, maintenance workers are only doing productive maintenance work less than 40% of the time. The block of time that's bigger than that is the time they spend looking for the parts and information to do their job. So having bills of material, particularly for process critical, safety critical equipment, puts the parts that they need in the hands of the maintenance guys, also improves maintenance productivity.
Mike, what do you estimate the success rate?
I'll do a short answer this time.
No, I think folks find the explanations helpful. Mike, what do you estimate the success rate is for second sourcing materials, assuming the description is 100% accurate and complete?
It's quite high. If you use UNSPSC standard descriptions, most of the spare parts in production plants are available from multiple sources. Sometimes when we have complex equipment, the OEM will only give you an OEM part number. So you'll have the part number of the equipment manufacturer rather than that lower level original so the manufacturer wants to sell you a ball bearing, even though they go to Timken and get the ball bearing themselves. So if you start out with just the OEM part number, then you got to go buy it from them. But if you use the full-on description, let me describe that ball bearing in detail, you're able to recognize it's not just the OEM, but here's where they got it. And then here are the 3 other competitors. So for the broad list of spare parts on shelves, there are multiple suppliers. And when you get to a rich description, then you can search based upon that description. One of the good sources to search is SAP's Asset Intelligence Network. Go look among the libraries and you find multiple sources. You find multiple types, and then from there you can source it in multiple locations.
Mike, I've got one that I know you're going to love here. This is right up your talk track. I've heard you share this answer so many times. What would your suggested approach, how would it help me identify obsolete inventory?
Well, that same survey that I mentioned before, we'll take the customer's complete maintenance data. When we do that usage analysis that I mentioned previously, let's go look at your maintenance history, and we'll find over the last period of time for that equipment, here's the list of materials that you used. We do that first to help customers create bills of material, as I mentioned. If this is the stuff you use, then that's your BOM for this equipment. So we can look at your maintenance data and say, here are the bills of material that you have. Here are the materials associated with that. We can then look at usage and say, here are additional bills of material that you could have, and we'll create those. Then what we find quite often is, look at this. Here are all these materials that aren't on a bill of material, aren't on a bill we could create. Here's just other stuff. Quite often that's obsolete inventory. Now there's some reasons it could be there. It might be safety stock. That's legit. But a lot of that quite often is obsolete inventory. This is how the company that I mentioned earlier said they saved 100 million. We looked at all available spares, and here's stuff that we just don't need anymore. The way that happens is without an equipment tied to a bill of material, tied to a material master, the company can retire a piece of equipment from the field, and there's not an easy way to know that that whole shelf of spare parts is only waiting to be used on that equipment, and it'll just sit there forever. So over time, it builds up, and only through a synchronized organization of your master data to do equipments to BOMs to materials, you have that answer. In fact, quite often we see customers that think about optimizing their supply chain just as a stovepipe. I'm going to go fix my supply chain. When you do that, you get a lot of benefit, but what you know at the end of that activity is, I know exactly what I have on the shelf. Without it tied to BOMs, without it tied to equipment, you can know what you have on the shelf, but you don't have a way to know what you need on the shelf.
Makes good sense, Mike. Next up, I know another favorite for you, a what if question, right? These can go in any different direction, but what if we need plant walkdowns to collect as-built equipment data?
I touched on that earlier. fortunately, there's technology to the rescue. We used to do that ourselves. Today, you don't want us traveling. We don't want to travel. What we're able to do now is equip your local guys. We'll give you the technology that we would have used, and it actually is it'll run on any handheld device. It's a photographic field data collection tool. So it'll organize the photos. We'll start with photos of a nameplate. We can organize the data to collect the photo of the nameplate, the photo of the collection tag. You can organize the photographs. It'll collect the geolocation as well, such that you can engage your local electrician or a local technician that already knows your plant. Doesn't have to be an engineer because we're just collecting photos. We'll plan the routing, collect the photographs, and then from there, we can harness the technologies. We'll do optical character recognition. We'll do image recognition, first of all, to say, just based upon a library of 4 million nameplate photographs, we'll recognize what that nameplate looks most like. Then we'll do an OCR to read the data from the nameplate. We can engage crowdsourcing. We can engage our machine learning tools to get from photographic information to an enriched record. But we will just equip your teams locally with the technology so that you can do that field data collection. There's another way to go about it. With this technology, we can do it incrementally. So if you like, just let's do a fast track. Collect your process critical, your safety critical equipment, so we can get the key data right now, and then you can put that same technology on a portable maintenance aid, so that every time your maintenance or inspection worker goes to the field, they can do a rolling audit. So if he's there doing a maintenance task, we can say, here are 10 other equipments within 20-foot range. Would you collect the data on those? So that when you deploy the portable maintenance aid in concert with SAP's Master Data Governance and Asset Information Workbench, everybody is an auditor. We can do a rolling audit, so we can structure it so that every 6 months you will retouch every process critical, safety critical equipment to ensure that we keep the data right with that governance infrastructure.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of great sense, Mike. And what is of particular import, I think, and it really stands out right now in this crazy COVID-19 world that we're in right now, is the tools and the solutions that you're sharing enable organizations to be able to make their technicians, their maintainers, their operators, their contractors, internal auditors of the business, the other folks that are on the outside, like Utopia or any other vendor out there, doesn't have to be on site. And I think that's critically important right now in today's COVID-19 world. Another question coming in, folks. Again, reminder, type your questions in now. We've got a few in queue. I want to make sure that we try to get through as many as possible. So go ahead and get them in now. Mike, you kind of touched on this in your last response, but maybe you can just expand on it just a little bit. Can you use machine learning to cleanse and enrich material according to taxonomies?
Yes, absolutely. We will, when we begin in the build phase, we will work with you to define the target taxonomy. For equipments, the preferred standard is ISO 14224, as I mentioned. Now there are variants of that. Petroleum Industry Data Exchange, PIDEX, is a variant of 14224. We understand PIDEX. It's really most important that you and we embrace a standard more than specifically say, here's what it is. We can adapt it. If you already have a standard, we can accommodate to a degree. But with that standard in place, then the machine learning tools are able to kick in and do recognition of partial data, it's called fuzzy logic. I don't want to do my imitation of an IT guy, but we use a series of algorithms. We will link 3 different algorithms in concert and then do probability of correct answer and compare various algorithms so that as the data moves through the process from recognizing the name on the equipment to recognizing what's the class of equipment. If that's that manufacturer model number, then that's a centrifugal pump. If it's a centrifugal pump, then here are the characteristics that I need. Based on those characteristics, I can mine the data from the long text, put everything in the proper order, standardize it. So there's only one way to describe black. It's not BLK, it's not B, it's here's what it is. So we standardize everything. That's machine learning. Then based on that, we can have other machine learning algorithms go to the manufacturer website. We can crawl the website, scrape the data, fill in the missing fields, and then finally organize that data in one form such that it's loadable into SAP's Asset Intelligence Network. So there's several machine learning algorithms in play. We will use them in parallel and in concert such that we can get high probability data to you. So we will agree with you on what constitutes a robust answer to a problem. There's other situations where maybe your data is incomplete. We can do an analysis and say, I think this is probably this, which is the same as this. We can then engage your subject matter experts in a collaborative session. Here's the data we know that's right. Here's the data that we think that's right. Collaborate with you such that you get the data that you're comfortable with, and it's all sourced and referenced such that you're comfortable with the output. So it is machine learning, but it's non-trivial. It's not a science project. It's one that we have tested out through now millions of equipment and millions of material, beginning with our expertise from the last 18 years.
Yeah, 18 years of data certainly helps create very powerful training sets and algorithms, right, Mike? Mike, the next question just coming in. What sort of success have you had, has our team had in identifying details for stock items that have been in store for extended periods of time, say 20 plus years?
That's a good question. Well, the complication there quite often is that the manufacturer that made that is no longer making it. Quite often, for older equipment, for older spares, the manufacturer has been acquired by another manufacturer. The part is no longer made by the original equipment manufacturer. Now it's been replaced. The same manufacturer over time will obsolete one product and replace it with another. So that's where the analysis gets tougher. We've done this quite a bit over time. We've done that level of research. So our database is fairly rich. It's been able to say, I see what you had, that's now not available, but here's what's replaced it, and here's what's available in its place. It's not perfect, and particularly for older plants, we can't find everything. So we'll take your data, we'll do this enrichment. Where the machine learning falls short, we can then bring in subject matter experts that can do additional enrichment. So it's not an exact science when you get to truly old equipment, and frankly, a lot of our customers are running with 50-year-old equipment in the plant. So when you get to obsolete equipment, when you get to replacing manufacturers, it gets to be as much an art as a science. But we've got a rich database, and we've got content engineers that are used to doing that research. And generally speaking, if we'll take your project, you pay for the data that we get right. If it's not there, if it can't be found, then you don't pay for that.
Absolutely, Mike. Another question just coming in. Do you cover, or how do you address criticality definition and recommendations for stocking spares?
Well, SAP has the tools that will do criticality analysis. The reliability tool really drives your criticality matrix and determines criticality of equipment. So there are analytical tools that do that. We integrate with them. In the master data, criticality is a factor that we govern. So and we can integrate with external criticality analysis tools, including those from SAP. So when in the master data arena, when you create an equipment, we will automatically integrate with the criticality analysis tool, establish that criticality, and then carry that into the master data. Once you've determined criticality, that will then set rules for the spare parts. You can structure a business rule in the SAP product that said, I will not allow a safety critical equipment to be released unless it has a bill of material, unless that bill of material has material masters. So the business rules are there such that, well, we will of course do it when we build your data the first time, but more importantly, once you build it with governance underneath, you can structure the business rules that say, if I create a process critical or safety critical equipment, here are the supporting information elements that must be in place. You might say, I won't allow this equipment to be released unless it has a material safety data sheet, unless it has an inspection plan, unless it has a bomb. And we'll collaborate with you to build those rules. Then more importantly, the governance underpinnings will ensure that you are able to maintain those standards anytime you create new equipment, anytime you bring in new data on the back end of a shutdown or turnaround, or you do a capital project. Continually, the data is brought forward and carried to that enriched state before it's deployed.
Oh, nice. Two more quick questions, Mike. I think we have time for maybe we have time for maybe 3 or 4. Mike, you're an engineer by trade. And I think that's why a lot of folks really enjoy speaking with you is you came from the practitioner world. You were out there, you were the engineer on site. So being an engineer, I know you love numbers. Typically, what percentage of existing stock items are found to be obsolete?
Jeez. Huh. Well, that's a big generalization. Quite often we'll find when we do the type of analysis that I described earlier, we can find 20, 30% of a customer's inventory is in looking at MRO spares, 20 to 30% can be obsolete. Again, that depends on quite often age of the facility. If it's an older facility where equipment has been retired over time, the numbers get higher. Another thing that happens in this obsolete inventory and MRO spares optimization is just the nature of maintenance guys is we're completely measured on our ability to fix what's broken. If you put a maintenance guy in an environment where he doesn't really trust the data, his job is to fix what's broken. So he'll take one of everything you need and tuck it away over here. I know I'm going to need that. I'm going to stick it over here because I don't know. So it's probably an Alabama term. The Alabama term for that is rat holing. You're going to rat hole the spare parts that you need because I need what I need and I'm going to fix what I need to fix. When you get to an environment where the data can't be trusted, your maintenance guys are going to go rogue and they're going to store away what they need to get their job done. Fixing the data, building an environment where the data can be trusted, where the spare parts are there when they need them and you know that you can depend on it, allows you to get rid of the rat hole spares, allows you to work in an environment where you have an optimized set of MRO stores, and that perhaps 20, 30% of obsolete inventory you can get to a place where it's optimized, where you call one thing only one name and you don't store it in 5 places. You don't have the little rogue spares, and it all counts up. It adds up.
Roll Tide, Mike. I think somebody's been rat-holing my favorite K-Cups around here, so I'll have to look into that. Mike, how or what is the best tool or way to manage demand planning for a huge variety of spare parts with a very high level of variability in terms of needs, intermittent demand?
Well, in the maintenance world, it's really the maintenance planning tool. As you're able to build accurate maintenance plans tied to task lists, tied to bombs, the tools are there to do the building out maintenance plans such that you have bills of material attached, and then do the more you're able to do planned maintenance as opposed to break fix maintenance. As you transition to a higher level of planned maintenance, then the infrastructure's in place that allows you to predict spares for those. Break fix is always going to be a part of what we do, and in that world, then safety stock is the best answer. But the more you're able to do planned maintenance, as you do that planning and tie bill of materials to that, that does make a case for a broader use of bill of materials beyond just process critical, safety critical equipment. But the infrastructure there, the tools are there. It just becomes more of a best practice, a set of rigors that says how much of my maintenance can I move into planned maintenance.
Mike, a really interesting question just came in. It just grabbed my eye. Have you used, or is our team used, other commercially available databases to identify equivalent parts lists for an old one? For example, NATO's NMCRL.
I don't know NMCRL, but I know the smart guys that do. My role is to drive strategy and direction and be the pretty face up front. If we weren't on camera right now, I could pick up a phone and give you the answer to exactly that question. In defense in general, what I've been speaking to is commercial practice and 14224 and UNSPSC. We do quite a bit of work in the defense arena. As we do that, we embrace appropriate defense standards, and we are able to build the defense version of the conversation I've just brought in. If the guy that asked that question would send us a note, send me an email, I'll bring in my colleagues that can answer that question in great detail, but I won't try to bullshit you right now and say I have that answer in hand. Send us an email. Give me another chance, and we'll bring the right guys to have a better answer to that.
That's great, Mike. Yeah, we certainly can follow up with them directly. I think it's a very interesting question, very specific question that probably deserves a little bit more of a specific answer. You're absolutely right about that. Folks, we are just about out of time now. I realize we have a few questions left in the hopper. What we will do is follow up with you directly one-on-one. What I want to remind everyone to do, I hope you enjoyed today, and I want to remind everyone, Mike and his team are available today, tomorrow, next week to hold one-on-one meetings. These are casual asset conversations. Go ahead and click the link right now that's in the chat box. It's an interactive scheduling tool. You can find some time that works best for you. I know Mike and his team would be very, very, very happy to speak with you. The final comments, I see some questions coming in, or is there going to be a copy of the recording of the deck? Yes, everyone that was online with us today will get a copy of the recording as well as the presentation deck itself. And certainly on behalf of Utopia, I'm Tom Martin. We would like to thank you for joining us today. Reminder that the very next Utopia Live is in 3 weeks' time today. It's a very exciting Utopia Live. It's on May 7th with Mike Jordan. Mike's going to be back with us, as well as Accenture's Mark Pyatt. I've known Mark for a very long time. Incredibly intelligent, very, very, very engaging. He is the operational integrity guy. And certainly Mike and Mark are going to be talking about all things new and creative solutions for intelligent asset management. Some really innovative solutions that Mark and his team are just on the cusp of rolling out right now. So we all look forward to that. We wish everyone continued health and well-being, and we look forward to seeing you at the next Utopia Live on May 7th.
Thanks for your time.